older books or donate them to a poetry bank. And I'll look across at you on the other side of the sofa. You'll be smiling while you knit, firelit, still wearing the wedding dress you made. A couple of years ago, my second collection, I tried to sort of make Philip Larkin a little more left. And I put him in various sort of situations. And one of them was to stop him being such a miserable sod. And this poem is called Home is Not Sad. And I will try to summon the spirit of our Phil for this very poem. Home is not sad. It stays with us. And I'm going to open the book now because I've forgotten my second line. That was unintentional for a laugh. Home is not sad. Home is not sad. It stays as it should stay, redolent of early morning scurries from those who go to work or play. Keeps the cat dry and safe. Smells of curries lovingly made the night before. Displays excerpts of lived lives on its hallowed walls. A joyous exhibition with no pain on show. A warm welcome mat in the hall. A place to return. Again, your clutter and hoard. A full fridge. That smell. Okay, for our first Yaffle, we have a wonderful poet, a massive presence in the lead scene. She runs Runcible Spoon, and she brought a fabulous collection called, what was it called, Kathleen? The Wilderness of Skin. It was a bloody nightmare to edit now because she had these shapely poems and hard returns and stuff. It took me about 5 weeks, but it was worth it because it was Kathleen. Kathleen Strafford.
Broke my hip in September, and so I'm just getting to the place where I can start to walk. It's a bit shaky yet, but I'm almost there. This is called Taking the Long Way Home. And it's, women reach an age where they realize who they really are. Days are museums of things designed to weigh women down. Some have affairs, pour their hearts out only to find gaps in their lovers' fingers, slit their wrists to view their pulse from the inside, keep screams in a jar. On the long way home, a whole universe exists where women dig in pockets for pieces of themselves, finding the women they once were, watching the dandelions in the wind lose their minds, scattering seeds, starting in one galaxy and ending in another. Halfway finishing a letter to their mother, sprout open their siren throats, realize tragedy and silence grow in the same garden. Women, let your life spill like an overturned drink. Allow your screams to mop up names who make your mouth run dry. Under your skirt lives a Freudian slip. It's on the tip of your tongue. Say it. Let pussy and armpit opinions grow wild. Uncurl your fist of grief. Use fingertips. Focus on your breathing. Stretch everything but the truth. Love hard. Love often. And please remember, you are alive. Act like it. Thank you. This is called For That Great Relief of Having You to Talk to. You know, sometimes in the middle of the night when you can't sleep, and one of those nights when your husband is not able to sleep as well, you have brilliant conversations. And this is called For the Great Relief of Having You to Talk to. It's 2:45. We're awake. Walk down this hour with me. I've bought the moon and its deep craters, bent the shadows back, bent the shadow's dark side for the crescent moon. You don't understand the role of the moon. Here in the tilt of our bed, laughing under the serious moonlight. I explain, I want to be like Penelope and Odysseus, trembling like delicate flowers wrapped in each other's arms after his long absence, giddy beyond sex. They spend all night sharing uncensored adventures, till rosy dawn invades through curtains. Someday, I'm sure they'll find us, fossiled, scrumbled under our duvet. Until then, I'll use my last breath to whisper in your ear so many things left unsaid, reclaim all the spaces we call days, taking me to the edge. Let these moonbeams replenish love, tend to its fires. Let's talk before sunlight curls from our lips with the hardened grip of day. Who knows how much time we have left? Thank you. Mom in the photo, 1948. There's a reckless glamour, hands in faux mink pockets, wind flying tight curls, glowing face as sky introduces unborn children. Your smile, your over-the-rainbow smile, as love breathes easy. Even the pine tree points to every direction but down. No one knows I love the one behind the brownie camera. Afterwards, you will follow the shadow of what is now holy ground to his Ford jalopy, securing your nuptial plans. I'm 5 years away from sneaking into your bedroom, balancing in your heels, wrapping around furs, clipping on earrings, posing in your vanity's round mirror, spraying perfume, smearing lipstick, recklessly pretending to be you. And I'll finish with this one. This is a brand new one. It's a poem after Carol Ann Duffy. It's called Let Time Rewind. When we first met, I lost my mind hearing we lost him. The only night before, you had garbled, I love you. Our shadow travels backwards over the choppy Atlantic, splashing grief away. Slowly the pain, having found a home in my skin, begins to fade. It's Christmas. Snow and fairy lights glow. They carry you back to the care home. You gain strength and the ability to walk. I trace the sutures from behind your ears. One by one, they disappear. I lose your last email in my sewing box. Off to college, skipping classes, playing pranks, torturing your sister. Oh, I have a sudden wish to head for Jennings. My car reverses in the street. I give in to all your requests, answer all your questions as if time doesn't exist. Bare limbs calls crimson gold leaves back home. You said you were too old to trick or treat, but we catch the blue hood flying from house to house, throwing candy back in the neighbors' doors. Your hair grows Buster Brown, wearing that rounded collar and bow tie on your first day of kindergarten. Running in circles, trying to escape back into my arms with rubella, rocking you for hours, dipping you in cool water. One foot and the other in your paddling pool, photos of your gambling naked, captioned, yes you will, no I won't. Your silken hair wisping to your shoulders. Oh, how you change when we meet again, carried back to the hospital by your grandma's, and for 5 days, alone in my hospital room, with desperate breaths I could only gaze through glass, your lips puckering, rooting for me. These are the days before our future, my only son. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
It's lovely to be here amongst the Yafflers, so thank you for inviting me. I'm going to read from this book, which is a book published by Yaffle called Frisk. I grew up in a family where you didn't argue about political ideas or ideas of any kind, really. You agreed. It was bad manners not to. Then I joined a political theatre group in 1979, and I met Greg, who was a kind of intellectual bully who loved to argue, but he also published my poetry. He was the first person to do that. It's called Finishing School, and this is for him. Music, you said, is guff, a profound admission that we cannot cope. We battled that for hours over cauliflower crumble and the washing up. Bollocks, I shouted. Music gets us through, is all we have when the lights go out and words fail. Sing and survive. You taught me to argue. Yes, you were brutal, but from you I learned that verbal blows are seldom fatal. It ended badly. I dared walk free. You have no judgment. You roared at my back. Thanks to you, I did not agree. I go to Dortmund sometimes to read poetry with Ralph, who we fondly remember here, and he still lives in Dortmund in a small flat. I was staying with him the first time I went there, and he got a note through his door from an anonymous person, which said something like, "Be quiet, be more quiet in your filthy flat." And it was just signed Mr. Dingsbooms, or Herr Dingsbooms, and which means in German, Mr. Somebody, Mr. Nobody. In other words, synonymous. So I thought I would write a poem for Mr. Dingsbooms. I wondered who he was. Dingsbooms, deep within his armchair, greedy for grievance, listens, skin prickling at a creak upstairs, muffled laugh, thump of bass. Written note required and will be issued. Dingsbooms tears a strip, writes and folds carefully the note, inserts in the envelope, licks. Slip it through the slit of the letterbox. Slip it through the slit, Mr. Dingsbooms. Down, keep it down, the note says. Chit-chat, chair scrape, calling, singing, laughing, love-making, play-fighting, card-playing. Down with it, down. Slip it through the slit of the letterbox. Slip it through the slit, Mr. Dingsbooms. Down in the dark of his flat. Come, Dingsbooms mutters to himself. Come back at me for that. Let's have some ding-dong, bish-bash. Let's have some lashback. Note, post it, slip it through my door. Knock on it, bang on it, shout at me. Go on, show me your fists. Threaten me, punch me, talk to me. Talk. For I am alone. Even now on a Sunday afternoon when no one should ever be alone. Dog, just an old dog flinging my bone. Visit me, listen to me, feed me. I beg you, need you, despise you. I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. Regards, Mr. Dingsbooms. Thank you. This is from, I'm doing that capitalist thing, this is my first book, Quick, which is published by Yaffle Press. Not a patch on Yaffle, I mean, let's face it. This poem is called Return, and it's about when I was about 21. I'd been traveling in Europe, and I came back. My father had died while I was away, and I didn't know. The last time I saw my father, we were smarting from a row, a classic departure, an open return, and the long local train gathering pace. I can flash it up now. Him standing there, the pouches of sadness in his face, and the last chance bleeding. When I walk back from the train, I am swinging a summerful of light on a thumb that has hitched through Italy and France from a Mediterranean port. I have lain awake all night on the ribs of a luggage rack, smiling at the thought of hearing his voice again. The scene unfolds, the village pattering with talk and shopping feet, unmindful of this Homeric return, the stride unannounced up the hill of my birth. I practice my greetings on the street, the old quarrel tucked with others in family earth. But this is where the tape spools out. The door opens to black. And when I call his name in the house does not call back. So I'm going to read one more. Two. Thank you, Mark. So I was working with a photographer called Lucy Saggers, and she told me, she used to work in Africa, and she told me this amazing story about, I thought, these are all around the theme of home, but, and she told me about an encounter she'd had with a chimpanzee in the zoo, a very desolate, kind of deserted zoo, abandoned zoo, really, in Africa. And so this is from her point of view about her meeting with Jacob, the chimpanzee. I was here to see Kolo, renewing my visa, though passport snug in my pocket. I could go anywhere. You were going nowhere, Jacob. Back against the wall, chewing your stalk of a hermit's philosophy, fiddling your sticks. Famous for sticks stacked like femurs in a catacomb, your abacus of days. Orphaned by hunting, 18 years in the same cell, Jacob, I knew you. Your eyes in the cracked mud of your face as we held our mutual regard through bars. And Jacob, you were good, light as a daylight thief on the metro. You had it from my hip. I hadn't a clue till I found myself watching you strolling away like border control, fingering my passport. No, I gasped, for who was now the prisoner, pouring the steel, groping at absence. No, not that, Jacob. I wandered in the compound, framing excuses for the forestry commissioner, and then picked a flower, a red hibiscus. Nothing less would do. You took it from me gravely, like a king his tribute, then made me wait for the moment that is fired fast into a story I never tire of telling. Jacob, did we have an understanding then? Was it fair exchange? One red flower for my dubious freedom. So finally, just one more. This is actually happened. It's an extraordinary story. She just gave him the flower, and he gave her the passport. Extraordinary. So this is another home poem. Some friends of mine live in a house on Humberside, which was flooded. It just came over the Humber Bank about 5 years ago. This massive surge of water, and just filled up their house. And they had a lovely garden full of stuff. It's still a lovely garden again now, but we went over there and helped to clear it, and it was a lovely day actually. Just helping clear this crud away, really. It's called After the Flood, and if there are some references in here, I don't know. I talk about the Starry Most, which is that bridge. Do you remember the bridge in the former Yugoslavia? It was an 18th century bridge that was bombed and collapsed. And Hermannplatz is in Berlin, and I don't know if you remember those images of women clearing the stones after the Second World War and just clearing the stones away after the flood. It needed us then, the garden. Goldfish bellied in the sump of the pond. Branches leaned like drunks. Scrunched wattles of twig crouching in damp corners. Hildegard righted an angel. Jed swept. Luke raked leaf mass, cursing his back as out beyond the dike, the Humber guiltily twiddled its eddies. Then around noon the bonfire caught, Shane called by, Anne sang as she spaded sludge, and we all looked up at laughter blowing from the kitchen window, Ahmed and John. And no, we were not in Hermannplatz, shoveling bombed blackened stone, nor sweeping the ruins of the Starry Most. Nevertheless, the garden will be cleared, and faith rejoined with coffee. toast. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adrian Salmon. My pamphlet, Moonlight Through the Velux Window, came out with Yaffle a couple of years ago. I'm going to read other poems today that aren't in that. And the first one is called Dulce Domum, which, if some of you know The Wind in the Willows, will know it's the title of the chapter where Mole is out with Rat and catches the smell of his old home. And this was sparked off by a conversation with somebody where they mentioned that they grew up in the town that I grew up in, which I have no reason to go back to anymore. So here we go. Dulce Domum. The people at the top of the hill have laid down concrete to stop it, the laughter seeping from the grass, from children that were never theirs. They have tried to drown them underneath a swimming pool, patioed over the old sandpit. In the municipal playground, they are plagued with chrysalises, ghost forms of long-gone children. They sweep up every morning and through the day, but they keep on coming, husk after husk, crunching underfoot in the mild autumn. The wiser sort know how to treat them. If left, they'll just dissolve. Nothing anchors them now to these forgotten places, these towns that hold no ties except a brief spark in conversation, the almost imperceptible scent of home. Thank you. This next one is about home as body, or the body as home. And it's about that feeling of when you're getting over being sick, but you're not quite completely better yet. And it's called After an Illness. Afterwards, though nothing was taken, the old place didn't feel the same. It wasn't the fact of the break-in, so much as being there while they did it, parading the things they had no interest in front of you, your voice, your life force. They wanted to remind you of the choices you'd both made, that yours of settlement, cooperation, trillions of cells with purpose could be brought low in hours by theirs of every cell for itself, radical freedom, piracy. You go around straightening the ornaments. They don't look right. There's still a strange smell coming from somewhere. So the next three poems are about places where I used to live. When I was a kid, for 2 years, I was kept in almost complete isolation. Me and my brother completely confined to home. Used to think it was because I was very ill. My brother came to think it was a case of Munchausen's by proxy, but we don't know. Anyway, so this is called the Summer of 76. In this summer, there was a lot of talk about that. And this is my Summer of 76 poem, which is during the time when I was kept there. The Summer of 76 is, of course, a myth. For me, it belongs to my before times, both parents living in our stronghold on the hill. The first year of our confinement, friends forbidden, visitors, never children, scrupulously vetted, mother and father masked if even slightly sick. I remember little and suspect this must have been my choice, but I can still see the wood on fire behind us, the hot haze. How I was excited we could be next. How from a certain point of view, I wasn't wrong. I expect a lot of you probably use old addresses as passwords, and this next poem came out of that. Bad IT security do occasionally use the odd old address as a passwords. This one's called Password Hygiene. A row of asterisks hides the passwords I type in each day. Old addresses, a letter changed here and there to a number, routine, automatic. I don't think about the places. I'm lying. I think a lot about the places. The first I only half remember. It troubles me because there's someone missing, a woman whom I'm sure was there. I'm sure I loved her. She had the same name as my mother. How strange is that? But didn't stay. Sheila, the lost one. I remember the noise, the shouting when she left. I would have been 3 or 4 or younger. Was that the first time I realized homes might not be safe? I should remember her. I should. A row of asterisks, that's all there is. Even when you get the password right, some things won't unlock. And this next one goes back to that house where we were kept. It's called Day Trip. In my second year at boarding school, the matron took a group of us on a day trip. We wound up near the village that until 3 years before had been my home, the house upon the hill, the fastness. I begged her for a detour, wanting to show them all where I had come from, the place that made me. Look, here is where they kept us away from everyone. Here is the sun lounge, where my father would bring his surgical tools to stitch me, assisted by my mother. Here is his old study. Here is where he died. I wanted to feel in charge of my own past, but home is a place you leave and can't revisit. The new owners wouldn't let us in. Matron took us for tea. I remember her first name was Louise. What did you see that day, Louise? What did you see? And this last one's about the place where I live now, and it's about a nice thing. It's about the 2 bats that appear regular every summer, and it's just called bats. There are always 2, half an hour after sunset, trajectory always a wide ellipse around the U. If I stand in the middle of the lawn, they swoop around me, tiny pipistrelles, no heavier than a sheet of paper tumbling in the breeze. They're eating the invisible. A wealth of midges, inexhaustible, brings them back the same time every year. Sometimes I wonder if they're always the same bats. I know some can live for 30 years, but not these. It must be 5 or 6 generations since we've lived here. Mated pairs, parent and child, or just hunting partners. Who knows? I want to say something big about them, but I'm afraid it would crush these little beings, circling and feeding so determinedly. So maybe it is enough to say that tonight, and for as long as summer lasts, behind the house that we are privileged to own, the appearance of a pair of bats can be relied upon, and that sometimes I will sit and witness them feasting in the gathering dark. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Sue Butler. I'm going to start by reading from my pamphlet, which was published in December 2020. So it hasn't had very many outings. It spent a lot of time being locked down. The pamphlet is a memoir of my life as a GP, but this first one's actually taken from my childhood when I was very friendly with a family of refugees. Heavy water. Twice weekly, a flat-faced lorry heaves up the hill the iron water tank. Bright splashes spatter darkness on the dusty road. On the verge, wheeled water drums, some ridged and round-bellied, some ramrod straight, brill cream smooth. They smell of spade digging and the blade that churns the washing machines of wealthier women. The children poke their heads into them, calling up echoes. The mother wheels the water. It takes 2 arms, and the father has only one. Perhaps he lost the other in the war. The mother looks at the mantilla pattern of coal dust and sweat worked into his arm, the sugar beet curve of muscle growing in hers, and thinks of home. This is another one taken from an incident in my childhood, but not in my pamphlet. A man is coming home full of emptiness. It's after the poem called The Table by Edip Cansever. He has trodden mud from the building site, right across the kitchen floor before they have time to ask where his shoes are, how he drove in those old things, heavy and clarted. He puts down his keys, then his coat, right there, scattering cutlery set for supper. He puts down the hen house they made their first office, the persistent smell of sun-warmed hen shit and scrubbing water, adds the spec for their first job, the cheap paper rough, separating at the creases. He puts down pre-senile, silently practices letting it out of his mouth, pre-senile. He puts down a photo, 2 couples, DJs, homemade long dresses, everything sheeny as silver for the 25 years business he wishes they'd reached. He puts down his slide rule, the braille of tenths and whole numbers firm between thumbs and forefingers, puts down the dressed foundation stone waiting at the back of the workshop for the bishop to lay. Dementia, sudden, a hand on a wasp hidden in the bedclothes, cold comfort of knives and forks, the table neatened, times tables, bedtime prayers. Back to my pamphlet again. Often as a GP, you are in or learn of distressing times in homes. So this is ways of looking at a bruise. Embarrassing how easily I fell for that old lamppost tale again. Twinset, pearls and RP and your secrets safe with me. The day-old bruise, ripe and purple as a plum, sun-warm on the palm, oozes if you squeeze, flesh, soft and wet as unset jelly, then fades, slow as the charmer's stake lowers its hood, attentive to every movement of the pipe, every tremor of the tune. That moment, bone slamming into bone, the bubble wrap claps of the flesh between them. A Valentine's Day rose bursts into flower. This is a Friday evening poem when I was beginning to think of going home. Across town, a family was about to lift the phone. Infinitives for his wife. This is after a poem called Infinitives for the Waitress by Hans Ostrom. To come home Friday tea time, to count again the days from now to payday, to squeeze between the kids on the settee, smell chlorine in their swimming damp hair and sausages frying, to hear the fat spit fizzle out, to see her face pale as smoked glass, to watch her clench her lips so tight they are gone between her teeth, to forget the days to payday, to tell the kids to get next door and the house so quiet you hear the fridge hum when she has to stop on the stairs, to feel her skin cold as sliding between the sheets at night, to dry her face with the cuff of your shirt, to hear next door, let the doctor in, take the kids when you need them to hug, to taste the sharp metallic shock of pregnant, and remember that wait for the human dough, kneaded and scrunched, to stretch out arms and legs, how all of you bawled, to think of this could be, won't be, baby, settling too soon to reach the womb, the tearing and bleeding, to listen for every breath, soft as a CD turning in the player, to press yourself small by the landing wall amid a ruction of radiostatic green overalls, ripped plastic, to kiss the place where her hair parts and her roots show as they carry her away, to drop onto the bed, her smell on a pillow, your wedding photo smudged with blood on the floor. This is a short one again, not from my pamphlet, just to finish on a more cheerful note. For me, a home is always a house and a garden. A garden doesn't have to be a big one, full of happy surprises. So this is Smooth Newt. For months, we have been hidden from each other, lumbering, slumberous. Now your back flip like the slip of last year's grass heads into the skip shucks off winter. A small rush of air, barely there, the breath of the piper before the tune, and your splash somersaults us into spring. Your lust chasses through the cream-striped iris spears, sways among the lily pads. Earth-scuffed belly crawler no more, in the water's embrace, you flash your tangerine courting suit and dance. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Claire Wigsell. What a fantastic standard of poetry this evening, fantastic. My first poem is from the Whirligust third anthology and the Yaffle Prize from 2021. This is called Something Lost. Once we inhaled our village spores, smelt the first frost, the mud in the lane, sucked in hairs and pollen in spring, the mites living in the old gate. We took in dust in dry summers, the mulch when we tramped the woods. Carrying baskets up old Martha's Hill, we gulped in flies and tiny seeds. Our noses knew the brackishness of water after rainless days, dankness when the river flooded. We breathed in the morning breeze, a hint of warmth tinged with green, exhaled air for the oak in the yard. Now, the next one is from an anthology that's coming out in the new year, and it's about the Brontes. And this one is a found poem using mostly Anne Bronte's words from Agnes Grey. So I don't take none of these are my words. I have done the ordering and the arrangement. It's called The Soaring Rooks. Not rich enough to own a watch, she only knew the time from the slow lengthening shadows she could see from the window. The high wall with a massive wooden gate cast a darkness that took possession of the whole ground, forcing the golden sunlight to retreat inch by inch and take refuge at last in the very tops of the trees. A colony of noisy rooks were reduced a few moments later to the sombre workaday hue of the lower world, her own world within. Dreary it was to dwell on the dull, grey, desolate path before her. As she watched, a few birds soared above, receiving again the lustre of the sun, which imparted to their sable plumage the brilliance of deep red gold. She felt the purity and freshness of air, breeze enough to ripple feathers, precious moments of warmth, the wide view beyond the path, beyond the park, of fields and moor. This scene, like a flint and steel, fell on the tinder of her wishes, igniting the flame of hope within. My grandparents in the 1930s bought a tumble-down cottage in the southwest, down in Cornwall. And they bought it so that they could go skinny dipping, because it was a secluded cove with a steep path down. And for that reason, all my life I've been going there, because my grandparents lived there, and then my parents and my sister and my uncle still live there. So that's one of the homes for me in my life. So Jill, you'll have to think about skinny dipping, Jill. Yeah. This is called The Way Down to the Sea. The first mark I make on the map dissolves. My hand moves slowly to lay down the road, applying pressure to make it darker, bolder. The paper rocks, disrupting it. As I draw my parents' house in pencil, it doesn't sit right. Erased, added in again, it leaves rubbings, smudges, deep indentations, a flaky surface, a smell of warm Welsh cakes. The lane's familiar wiggles unfurl from the lead, but they bend too far or not enough. More lines appear, a mesh of half-trodden roots leading to the land's end. On the green, I sketch in the cluster of cottages. They're covered by overlays of tissue, faded watercolour, half-completed sketches, the thud of ball on wood, a child's whisper. The broken line of the footpath hugs the wall, passes the lost door of the secret orchard where small Beauty of Bath apples soften. It turns to run along the cliff edge, to fall as the land cuts away to the tin mine. My fingers know the outline of the tall chimney, the gaping windows, but not how to show, covered over, the shaft. The path winds down over sharp stones, into a gash blasted in the cliffs years ago, onto footholds in vertical rocks, down to sand brought in by longshore drift. Swelling and heaving, the sea curves over the horizon beyond the margin. I tuck the map away, folding and refolding, following the creases, but still it will never lie flat. And the last one, is a lockdown poem, but it's a new poem. I don't know about you, but it's taken me quite a long time to process it. But from across the ocean. I sit in a white plastic chair in my neighbour's garden, at a distance, sipping from my flask of tea. It disturbs her that she cannot make me a cuppa. She sits in her favourite chair, a small figure in the opening of her patio doors, wearing a large straw hat with lace trim. The sun rising higher helps the tightness in my chest. The copper beech's new leaves are neon purple. There are no clouds in the sky. Each day we follow the news, but it casts a long shadow. Tomorrow is uncertain. We listen to birdsong. No noise from traffic or building work, just the 2-note sirens on the top road. I break into song, the one my first boyfriend sang in the 1970s. The notes are thin. He died last year. She reaches for her mouth organ, plays breathy notes from 1960s Korea. She has never been back.
I'm Jill Connors, one of the editorial team at Yaffle, along with Mark and Mike Farron, who's down south somewhere, I think, at the moment. But he's the one who does all the wonderful covers for us and all the typesetting. So this first poem from me is also from the Bronte anthology that's coming out in the new year, that's edited by Edwin Stockdale. It's called The Tenant. Drink and infidelity passed down from father to his son. She's seen it in her own kind, attracts the same kind. She marks herself safe from every weekend piss up, glad he's too far gone to lift his fists. Still, she knows this time might be the one, watched by his son. Learning the trade of being a man by his father's hands, how cheap, how easy women are, how little it takes. And every grotty hovel, damp-walled rental flips him closer to an edge she's scared of falling from. So she leaves him, takes her boy and her belongings, changes her name to hide her past and save her reputation. Men pull in all directions. Love and truth are close accomplices. Retribution isn't always fairly dealt. Drink is at the heart of everything. What made her love him made her hate him in the end. Thank you. The small stuff. I worry about you, girl, so don't worry about yourself. Don't settle for the first man who says he loves you. There'll be others. Any dress you wear will be wonderful. That body you have will not always look like that. Hug your mum. Spend money on yourself, but save some. You might not have a pension. Don't start smoking, you'll only have to stop. Don't use drink as a prop. Kiss your dad. Don't lie, steal, or feel bad about breaking hearts. Don't fester or ruminate, but do buy a house for $17,000 in 1988. So I'm in the very fortunate position of having a collection called Tadaima, which is Japanese for I'm home. So pretty much wherever I look in this book, there's a poem that has the theme of home. This is the first poem in the collection, Preludes. Before the storm, a mustard sky, the bloody sun, might cause Richard of York to double take. No serious portent, though, just sand blown from a desert too far away to care about. Stress head brought on by scuppered plans is made worse by the local news. Chinese chemists offer tinctures and teas to soothe body and mind. I'm taken in. Outside, Ophelia is picking up. The willow pours its heart onto a train track. Planned departures are delayed, and 2 boys leave but don't come back. Herbal tea won't shift the ache in me tonight. Supermarket drugs numb the worry of displacement. Rue, like regret, should be taken with caution. And for now, this house is still my home. I've not read this poem for quite a while, but there was a time when I read it a lot, so a lot of you will have heard it before. Billy's back. To being a local hero, boy made good, and getting slapped on the back by a Falklands vet that his dad, stunned with pride, knew at school. He's back to waking in his clothes and yawning pizza boxes on the floor of his room. Back to his mum, overjoyed that he's back, while wishing at the same time that he'd leave. Billy's back to boring twats that hang around the boozer when the drum of beer marches him away from daytime telly. He's back to sleeping with his exes, because they get off on the glory that sticks to them. In his mind, he tallies up the dead, along with every drunken fuck, each frenzied thrust, a hole in the head of the Taliban he's got lined up. At night, he's back to dreaming of his mates that never made it and to talking to their ghosts. He's back in Bastion with Jimmy, Ian and Jeff, their legs blown off. Taffy with his eye out and Nobby always chatting shite. But now it's all Nobby can chat. Billy's back. To Fridays down the pub and Sunday roasts. Back to his mates' pissed up banter, nights out after the footy and a shag if he's lucky. Back to battling through the week and living for the weekend and wishing he was back in Afghan. Waiting for bodies being brought back in boxes and his best friend shot to shit and leaking life into the sand, where he'd left mates that knew where he was coming from, didn't ask where he was going. Lads that let him be. Lads that were as desperate to get home, but now feel just as lonely there as he. That poem was sort of based on my stepson who spent some time in Afghanistan. And this poem's about him too, and it's about homesickness. That kind of snow. You had wanted snow, though not the cruel cold of an Afghan winter that crept inside your sleeping bag and froze the dampness in your socks. There the snow fell suddenly on a landscape you'd come to know, turning it back into an enemy. No, not that kind of snow, but snow that falls here on our hills and sprinkles tops of walls, the kind of snow that whispers in the night, sighing over streets and fields, stays for days to disappear in pools of slush. Your snow lay thick on corrugated iron and on flimsy makeshift walls where you shivered in the dark, waiting for a dawn that showed the scars. Conflict, the thief who took whole men and sent them back in halves or quarters. You had wanted soft, expected snow, the snow that falls in lanes and covers gardens, where footprints are the proof of destination. So I looked on my memories on Facebook today, and there was a status that said I'd been driving through the moors in the fog to get home, and when I got home, tea was made, and he was a keeper. This poem's the title poem. It's called Tadaima. Miles into the moors, the fog comes down, and for a while you don't know where you are, if you're even going the right way. You turn your music off, talk yourself home. The Japanese have 4 words for lost. It's a work-weary Wednesday, so there'll be no running from a cab to throw your coat over a chair, like Yevtushenko's poem where he calls his girlfriend my love. The Japanese have 2 words for love. There's an orchid on the kitchen windowsill and a Utagawa print you framed when you read People on a Bridge in a Simborska book at Salt's Mill. The Japanese have a word for too many books. It's warm and untidy. There's a sink filled with dishes, yesterday's washing draped. Sometimes there's a space too big to fill with words like, hello, how's your day been? The Japanese have too many words for sorry. There will be other days when you drive home through the fog to a house with too many books, but just 1 word for love. Thank you. So I just want to finish off by saying thank you everybody for coming to listen to us Yafflers, and thank you to you Yafflers for reading your wonderful poetry. Thank you.